Since I'm the doctor on the panel, and I completely agree with Venu that it's very hard to get time with us. Just a simple tip: if you would like to spend a month or two in a hospital, if you go to a teaching medical college, there's a very simple process of being a student observer, and it is possible for a non-medical person to be a student observer for a fee. So it's a very straightforward process. You go to the student section, you pay about anywhere from 8,000 to 25,000 rupees a month, and you get a month-long access into a department full of doctors. And sometime during the day, you will have a time to have coffee with them or lunch, and then you will be able to talk and shadow them. So just a tip that I wanted to give that will be possible for you.
Fantastic. Now, I have, in fact, before I jump into the next question, I just wanted to bring in a point that I had a discussion some time back with a doctor who was working in a rural area, in a large hospital. And I was asking him, like, what are your big challenges? What do you see really as something that would have been great if you were to really serve better? It was a 500-bed hospital, a very large hospital, and a few doctors and a lot of patients. And he said, my biggest problem is, how do I do the detection? If I need to buy a CT machine, if I pay the minimum or the cheapest product that you have in GE, I have to spend about 1 crore rupee. And if I do that, the amount of money that my patients pay me, it will probably take next 20 or 30 years to recover that money. And I can't really afford that. Why you guys cannot do something different? I don't know whether it is digital, whether it is anything else that can make it easier. And he said there are many doctors who try to find their own ways to find a solution for a lot of problems that they see in patients. We call it a jugaad, or we call it as, something which is a trade secret of a doctor. You go to that doctor, he's able to solve that for you. He says, people don't disclose that technology and the technology dies. People develop things, but it's only his proprietary item, and it does not come out. So, Dr. Jagdish, you have been one who has really made it public, made it right. You have tried to really bring it out to the market. How do you think we should, as an ecosystem, we should change it to bring more products out? Do you see real challenge? Have you seen this as a big issue for yourself?
Well, I think that the challenge really is, I would say, at a mindset level. I think when I developed my first product, which was an ENT endoscopy device, I really tried to wear all the hats and try to drive it myself, try to be the engineer, the designer, and try to take all decisions. And I failed miserably. It took a very long time to exit with that device, which now has been taken over by Medtronic, screened over 200,000 patients, but really didn't go where I wanted it to. And I think that's where, as an evolution, I realized that for doctors who have their knowledge, domain expertise as clinicians, I would recommend them to stick to that, but figure out a way to work with engineering and design teams who are really working full-time and taking this forward in some sort of a formal manner. And I think that is really one of the learnings that I got back from the Stanford India Biodesign program, is then started working and creating teams first, not inventing and then creating a team after, but creating a team first, finding an engineer, finding a designer and saying, hey, do you want to form a company and do something in the startup? And they say, what are we going to work on? And say, we'll find out together. And then spend a few months in the hospital, shadow doctors, figure out needs, filter them, understand the market, understand stakeholders, really looking at the puzzle first before fitting the pieces, and then executing it. And I think that's how, as a clinician, I felt it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And I hope if more doctors realize that, it's just a matter of time that each doctor could be having 3-4 satellite engineering design teams, each working on innovations that actually go to the market. Because as a doctor, I can tell you honestly, we can take it only this far. Like you mentioned, we could do it in our own clinical space. We could maybe have a couple of prototypes and treat our patients. But we really don't have the bandwidth to make this a scalable product that is business and profitable, right? It has to be someone else who drives that. And I think there is now that critical mass of engineers and designers who say, I don't want to work for a large company. I want to form my own entity, and I want to work with doctors and develop products. And I think that probably is the way to go. And honestly, I don't spend more than 6 to 8 hours a week with any one team, and I can easily manage my clinical career. because 6 to 8 hours a week, any doctor automatically has to spend time in doing research or writing publications and papers. It's nothing out of what we do. I rather spend that time with an engineering team giving inputs and get a product out.
Fantastic. Great insight on this. I bring you to the next topic. There was an incident when I was talking to a doctor. He said, every time today's patients, when they come to me and talk to me, when I say, hey, you have pneumonia, then immediately patient says, but Google says I don't have pneumonia. So Dr. Google has become more famous than the doctor himself. So he says, I need to be more prepared if I need to have a good discussion with my patients. So the digital world, the information is available. Today, probably solving a problem, what earlier Ravi as well as Venu were talking about, we are trying to solve an engineering problem. I think we have a lot of engineers who are trying to know what the input is, how do I create output. If they know what the heartbeat is, they can say, here is my analytics, and I can come out with a solution. But I think while we are trying to do this physical to digital world, physical we have made a good progress, right? I think we have made a fairly good progress. We have good equipment available. In terms of digital, probably that is going to be our next step to make this affordable solution. So I want to open it up for comments from anyone who wants to start as to what can be that differentiator, what can be that spark that can change today's solutions to a really affordable solutions which is going to reach nooks and corners of India if we use physical and digital combination. So
let me take a shot once. It's an inflection point, no doubt about it. But it's also an inflection point that probably one path leads to a dead end and the other actually gets somewhere. Let me first point out things that worry me about that thing. Right? There is a lot of effort. We have a plethora of sensors. We have a fantastic way of communicating from the sensors to whichever parts of your body to your cell phone, and suddenly there is this opened up. Right? But it also has created a whole lot of devices masquerading as medical devices, but at the end of the day, they are toys. We have to be careful to find out what is a healthcare product that solves a real problem, right? I'm not interested, or at the end of the day, there is no value in having a device that looks at your heartbeat and tells you that you're alive. You can look at a mirror and find out that you're alive, right? On the other hand, if that same device can solve or detect or screen for your arrhythmia of your heart, now suddenly that has got value. But the key here is that the steps that you have to do to make that device as opposed to a toy, although they look from an engineering point of view, they look very similar, they are extremely different. And I will try to point out one little thing that is different. And I used to be in this field, so I can understand that difference very well. If you're building a chip or a system for a cell phone or whatever it is, right? You're interested, as an engineer, you're interested in making this working this work very, very well. If it doesn't work in corner cases, your call gets dropped, right? This is entirely different in what happens in a medical device. Your focus from an engineering point of view for a medical device is to find out where the thing fails as much or more than where it actually works, which is what drives, which is why it is very different. So this comes back to my question, my worry about, in our rush to use digital health, we should not be making toys, because even in the West, the age of those toys are actually winding down very quickly, even today, right? You can see the stock market difference for Fitbit and all those things. You can see that. We should not repeat those mistakes. And we should be able to exploit the advantages that we have and not repeat the mistakes that happened there to prevent that, the glittering star of a digital health allowing you to measure everything else, which is really not very useful from a clinical point of view. It again comes back to Get a doctor. Get a medical guy to tell you why what you're doing is useful. Go after solve a real problem rather than, I have a sensor and hence I'm going to find a way to inject it into a medical solution. So that's my fear or promise of the digital health.
Great, fantastic point.
I was just reminded of how life is actually changing based on your comment that the doctor is sort of competing with Google at some level on solving the patient's problem. The thing is, even the GP practice should evolve. If you look at, I think one of the most fundamental changes that has happened in India in the last few years is the level of mobile phone penetration and now the level of data penetration. Based on now that Jio has also been launched, the estimates are that a good 175 million people will have access to data connection, access to internet in India, right? Now, with that and with a smartphone, there's a lot that can be achieved in the GP's clinic. There are lots of small attachments that can be added to either the camera or to the audio jack of the phone, which can do a lot of basic diagnostics and improve the capability even of the GP. So while he may be competing with online information when a patient walks in, I think just the quality of care that a GP will be able to deliver, even in remote locations, because of access to some of these, because of access to data, access to remote technology, and small devices which are low cost and can literally be shipped. I think the potential, therefore, is very high. So I think that is actually one lever because of which innovation in affordable healthcare in India will really look very different now in another 5 years' time. The second thing that is, again, it's still in its early days, but it's the influence of AI, right? So it's not just that I can capture the data and send it somewhere and somebody else can review it, which is a little bit more of a telemedicine facility, but you're literally saying, hey, I'll get treatment information. I may be a GP, I may not have the capability to do that, but now AI will do that for me. It's still early days. That's probably a little bit more than 5 years away before the GP is fully equipped with something like that. But it's definitely something that has very high potential going forward.
Great.
Just to add on this, what we see is a similar sort of a paradigm. Most of these equipment, what we see, if it is an ophthalmologist, he has some equipment. And then, if you go to the diabetologist, they have separate equipment. And there are a lot of things, which are very specific to a specific specialization. But then the human system, is more of a systemic thing. So through the eye, I use retina as a biomarker for various systemic disease. One of them which is very popular is diabetes, diabetic retina, which is one of the very deadly problems. So if I go to a diabetologist, the diabetologist will do all the checks and say, okay, for just this retina imaging, you have to go to the ophthalmologist. And then the ophthalmologist, will just take this image and then he would put his findings, but then he will say, go back to the diabetologist because he can collect all the information and counsel you. So these are the problems what you see. So what we said, okay, instead of we getting an ophthalmic equipment in the ophthalmologist place and addressing around 20,000 ophthalmologists, can we put this in the diabetologist place? Yeah. Instead of patient going to the hospital, to the ophthalmologist, can the images go to the ophthalmologist? So in that case, we expanded this market to 150,000 people because there are more than 150,000 people who are there. And now if you further extend it, if a GP can have this, a GP empowerment sort of a thing, if you can not only do diabetic screening, you can also do other things like Alzheimer's. That's one of the things which we are researching. Stroke detection at an early stage. These sort of things which can be done with the retina, then, it can be a very good tool for the general practitioners or GPs, and there, the market goes to 600,000 because there are more than 600,000 GPs. So that way, you see that by digitization, you can really expand the scope and also make things much more better. And it's like, instead of patient go to hospital, hospital go to the patient. So that sort of a thing, that paradigm shift can be brought.
Okay. Professor Ravi, any final thoughts on this piece?
No, this part is okay. I still want to hit the previous question of how do we expand the whole ecosystem in the country. And I just want to share that we come across so many doctors who in their class 12 couldn't decide whether to do medicine or engineering. And maybe some father or someone said, no, you must do medicine, and then the heart is still a little bit in engineering. And in fact, I can say that all 10 or 12 who are coming regularly to our lab, I think 8 of them actually joined, even got an admission letter from engineering college, but went to medicine. That is one. And I think there's so many doctors, not only in India, all over the world. I have actually reverse problem. My problem is that we get calls from doctors saying, and the top doctors, I mean, top neurologists, cardiologists, orthopedic, they say, we want to come and see you, and then say, hold on, I mean, not this month, maybe next month. So there are a large number of doctors in the country, clinicians, who are bubbling with ideas. They don't know which place to go to at least get a patient hearing about, okay, can we work together? And I think it's just that we have to show to engineers. We're talking about 15 lakh engineers coming out of the country every year. And even if you say 1% of them take up the potential of doing medical projects, we have opened up the whole floodgates. I mean.
Fantastic. Great.
Sure. Before I say, I would like to say I really like to thank Dr. Google. It's been very helpful for my practice because now I get patients much quicker because no moment they search even a small pimple, they come saying that, do I have cancer? And I would never get these patients otherwise because they would say, oh, it's just a pimple. But now when they go to Google and they think it's cancer, they come to me. And all I have to do is just tell them it's not, it's just easy money, right? So, but anyway, coming to the point, I think my point of view from a doctor's side is, see, doctors are wired to treat. And I think in India right now, the biggest pressing need is to improve treatment and therapy. And we are not there yet. Because there are a lot of issues here because there's one doctor for 1,700 patients and most of these doctors are centered in large cities. So imagine the moment you go to the periphery, that gap widens. We heard there are 18,000 ophthalmologists for the whole population. There are 15,000 ENTs. So specialists are even more scarce. And we don't have the kind of physician assistants and qualified nurses that the Western world has in terms of helping deliver care or treatment. You know, the nursing aides or the aides that support us are 7 standard or 10 standard pass. So really, how do we improve treatment? Some of the reasons why the devices that I've developed either got licensed out or pulled into the market very quickly is because they were therapeutic in nature and help doctors treat either at the GP stage or help them treat much earlier than before they could have complications. So I think a food for thought for all of you is that even though you're all in the IT and IoT is information and connection, if you could some way get therapy or treatment into it, then I think it'll be pulled into the market faster than you can imagine.
Fantastic. I think I want to summarize. This has been a great discussion. More you discuss, more you want to really listen to it. I think this cannot end. But we are reaching the time limit. So I would like to summarize. I think it's been a tremendous ecosystem right now in India in terms of the potential for growth. There exists enormous growth possibilities. India is growing at about 14 to 16% year over year in healthcare industry. And we are expected to reach about $180 billion in next 3 years. So that's a huge growth opportunity. And as the panelists mentioned, we are at a window of golden threshold for really making the progress. A huge opportunity for youngsters to get into it, but I think the challenge that they need to really work through is how do we create a partnership with healthcare teams, venture capitalists, academicians to really make sure the product that is being developed is meeting the requirement. You are not just solving an engineering problem, you are solving a human problem. So that's a huge difference. And at the end, I think while designing these products, I think a great point that was made by the panelists was about don't just look for successes while you are testing, look for failures to make sure you are making a foolproof product. Terrific discussion, and thank you, panelists, for your valuable inputs. Give a big round of applause to this team. So I want to open it up for any questions if audience have. Yeah. Okay, here.
I'm working on my startup on global organ donation system in connecting donors and receivers across the globe in an effective way. It is like a knife. You can use it for cutting vegetables or cutting something, whatever. On the same way, I'm working on that. My question is, we won the award on Kionix and ICMG award for that. My question is, for killing virus of cancer and you are killing rest all the things, have you invented anything on that? Just my.
You know, we had a written code. Whoever is keeping the head up, they have to answer. All are keeping the head up, so they are going to answer.
I think, like with whatever engineering answer I can give is that the image-guided therapy is the way things are moving, and we see more and more of such therapies which are becoming popular, HIFU or RF ablations and all sorts of, things like cyber knife and all that, which are more getting localized and treatment. So maybe Dr. Jagdish has.
No, I just wanted to clarify. Is your question that when there is a cancer, is there a better way to treat the cancer from an organ but without cutting or removing it? Is that? And
No, my question is, see, if the cancer is identified,
okay.
Person has to go through just they start therapy or consultation or injection, and for killing that particular thing,
Okay.
their hairs fall down, radiotherapy, these rest all the things means start killing.
Okay.
And there means for killing one virus, you will kill rest all the things. So is there inventions are happening and
Yeah, so I can give you, we have not been working on it, but there is work happening on it. Like for example, whether cancer will be treated by chemotherapy or radiotherapy or surgery depends upon the cancer and the biology of it. So it is not a choice that a doctor chooses that I will give chemotherapy to this patient or not. It depends upon what works on the cancer. But for those cancers where precise removal is required, there's an Indian company called Perfent Healthcare based out of Chennai that has made a very specific ablation technique where they burn this kind of cancer tissue very specifically without injuring the remaining parts of tissues. But a lot of research from the scientific side is happening now on turning your own body's immunity to treat cancer. And I think that is going to be a big game changer in the next maybe a decade or two on how cancer is going to be treated, and it's going to solve all these problems of things with chemotherapy and all. But I think a lot of scientific research has now moved towards taking your own immune system and stopping the immune reaction to cancer cells and kind of curbing it at that level. And I think the reason why cancer is cancer and hard to treat is because there is so many biological processes that occur there which are still left for us to understand that it's not as easy as just cutting it, removing it, or giving medications. But I'm happy to say that there's a lot of research happening, both in terms of ablation, fine surgical removal, as well as immunotherapy that's now moving towards cancer care.
Yeah, you know, GE has been spending a lot of effort on that research. And we have actually come up with, still the clinical trials are going on, where only the affected cells get impacted through a treatment, where no other cells get impacted. And we have seen positive impacts where the cancer has been completely cured. It's in various stages of development, and it won't be long before we see a real solution for this problem.
And I have one more question. We have many products in the world. And any product in the world, there is no negative impact. For example, knife is there for cutting vegetables. But people use it for some other purpose, killing. So, similar way, can you name any one product? It should not have a negative impact.
It's very, very difficult to say.
The reason I ask this question, I'm thinking very in a minute way, before implementing the global organ donation system, because this should not be, they trade it later. I'm thinking in such a way that, and minute way, and implementing in each state and country, it is such a very, very highly, I have to face every day so many challenges. That is the reason I'm asking.
Yeah, we can take this little offline. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask a question to Dr. Jagdish? This is on technology for medical education. So my name is Ananta Bhatt. I am from Chowki Services, and I'm a volunteer in the Talent CIG operation of IESA, where we work with engineering colleges. So we spoke a lot about the technology for treatment, but does it really need 10 years to produce a doctor? Is there anything happening in terms of using technology to produce doctors maybe faster? Maybe that will also alleviate some of the problems. So what are things happening in terms of technology for education, medical education?
Yeah. Well, I would really wish there was a faster way, but I don't know whether patients would be ready for a doctor who's just come out with 6 months of a crash course training. I think when we do 10 years, yeah, but when we do 10 years of training, I think the patients are rest assured that we have done enough to make sure that they're in good hands. But I think a lot of paramedical and ancillary support can definitely be trained in healthcare to assist the doctor to help them. So I think that is the way I'll answer, but I think we can take it offline because I think we're at a bunch of questions.
Look, I think I know there are going to be a lot of questions.
Last question.
This team will be there available outside to talk.
Request all of you one last question, if you don't mind. No, just why? Because we talk about 4% GDP we are spending on healthcare when compared to 1996, where 8% GDP India was spending. Leave aside Indian GDP on healthcare system. There is a big divide on healthcare system and healthcare providing to rural and urban divide. So 70%. You think about 2-tier and 3-tier cities where a patient will go to a doctor, he will diagnose, all tests he will conduct. And then what happens, sometimes somebody suggests you go to better healthcare, health facilities. You go to Manipal, you'll come to Bangalore. Again there is a test, again there is a test.
No, question.
So that's what, as Anjana said, let some IoT develop a software wherein let patient's Aadhaar card can be mentioned. So once test is conducted, next 3 months or 4 months, let them put the Aadhaar card, the same test. Why again and again they have to pay money for in the name of testing? So this is the one solution. Number 2 is, I have seen papers in Boston.
No, what is the question?
Yes, forecasting.
No.
The forecasting in India, we don't have any kind of a forecasting. I've seen some papers where they forecast about the next, these are the allergy patients or something like that. You can take precautions, etc., in USA and UK and something like that. But there is a big lagging in India where forecasting is not available. Something can be done with the forecasting of biological or abiological, whatever the particles people talk about. Thank you.
Great. I think we'll take this as an input for all of us to thought through, and maybe we can have a discussion with him offline.
Hey, thanks, Dilip.
Thank you.
I
Thank
want
you,
everybody
everyone.
to hang in here because we'd like you to kind of give them a token of appreciation for
Yeah.
having come all the way. I think Anjana has come from Bombay,
Yeah.
right? Yes, right.
Thank you. Venu. Anjana.
Thank you.
Shyam. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So you give it to me.
Very well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.